All right. So, super excited to have a very special guest today. And I am more than excited, like over the moon excited to introduce you to Trish Blackwell. She is the host of an iTunes top ranked podcast called The Confidence Podcast. And it has over 6 million downloads. Like, wow, over 575 episodes and over 1,200 5-star reviews. I mean,
Yeah. We're
amazing.
up.
So, Trish, thank you so much for being here today on the Bossing Up Overcoming OCD show.
Erin, I'm super. I just think we're going to have a really great conversation. I think you and I, well, we've already talked. We kind of used to be neighbors. We would have been great neighbors, right? Like,
Yes,
I feel like
completely.
we're going to have a great time chatting today. So, thank you for having me on the show. And we're talking about something that's going to hopefully really give your audience and your listeners some encouragement, some tools.
Absolutely. Well, and part of, with my audience, I know, and my clients, is just noticing their lack of confidence in themselves. And I've been listening to your podcast and I'm a huge fan. And so,
Yeah.
in reaching out to you, I think it's just been a wonderful communication, and your work is very beautiful too. And
Thank
so,
you.
with the theme of our discussion today, it's all about self-trust. So, yeah, I think that's going to be huge because I can see how that totally plays into confidence. And I'm curious, what led you to focus on self-trust?
Well, so on self trust and confidence are so intertwined. And the reason I got interested in the first place, so a little bit about me, if you're new to my work, is I am that typical Enneagram 3 type A personality, like overachiever. And I love being wired that way. But as we know with our personalities, there's a healthy expression of it and there can be an unhealthy expression of it. It can be a double-edged sword.
Right.
And so, most of my life story is about achieving, and always pushing for more. And so, though the world may have seen me as very confident on the outside, on the inside, I never felt like I was doing enough. I always felt
Oh,
pressured that everything was
yes.
going to fall apart. I needed to do more. And it was like, you reach that finish line and then it's the invisible finish line that moves. And so there was always this pursuit of more, which in what it did is it sparked that internal dialogue that and a belief that was false that I'm not doing enough. And if I'm not doing
Mm.
enough, I don't trust. Fundamentally, I'm communicating to myself. I don't trust myself. I don't trust myself to
Wow.
be doing enough because that means I either mismanage my time or I don't trust my knowledge. I used to overstudy for tests or over
Yes.
prepare for presentations. And you think about that. Why is that? Because we don't trust ourselves.
So makes
And
sense. Yeah.
and my background is a Division 1 collegiate athlete. I was a swimmer in
Yeah.
college and very competitive. And it became a problem. My confidence became a problem. And I used to love to race and I used to have a ton of confidence in a race. But when I started overthinking and I didn't trust myself and against somebody, I didn't trust my training, I would sabotage a race and I would get beat. And my coaches would say, Trish, we need you to trust yourself. We need you to
Mm.
trust your body. We need you to trust your training. And I was like, but how? Which is why I'm really like, I love providing basic tools for confidence to help people know, like, here's the how. Because at the time I needed it the most, no one knew how to teach me the how. They were like, just relax. And I was like,
Right.
cool.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Thanks. That
Tell
doesn't
that.
help me.
I
Yeah.
know.
Not to the type of thinker that I am.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Right.
learning how to think, and give myself tools to support and to trust. And what I learned over my 12 years of working in the coaching industry that I've been doing is, gosh, the more you build the skills and the tools, the skill of self-trust, the
Hmm.
deeper you're building an intimate relationship with yourself. When you can trust yourself, your
Right.
level of confidence increases, your self-efficacy increases, your belief in your ability to do something, your belief in your ability to follow through, like all of it just up levels.
Hmm.
And furthermore, when you trust yourself, there's so much more internal peace. And that's what we want.
Absolutely.
Just, you know what I mean? Like that peace and security. So that's why I'm really into it.
Oh, absolutely. And, even listening to your podcast, like you're passionate about everything. Like you bring so
Yeah.
much passion to,
Yes.
yeah, your conversations and everything. And it makes it really enjoyable to stay engaged as a listener. So
Well,
I
thank
think,
you. I appreciate that feedback.
yeah. And so the self-trust, I mean, so it comes from just being, well, doing life, right? Like
Yeah.
over. the overachieving really drives you to like,
Mhm.
there's no end point and you
Yeah.
don't know how to stop. So it sounds like the self trust is that key to kind of stopping yourself from overdoing.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
That sounds
There's an
painful.
overdoing. Well, it's hard to say because we think more is better. And we
Yes.
kind of have to go against for those listeners who are in America, this
Mm-hmm.
American like cultural thing that like is a tsunami that's like, yeah, if a little bit's good, then a ton must be better. If you just go over and do more, it should equal results. And it doesn't always. Because
Oh,
overworking, overstudying, over preparing can actually sabotage self-trust. Because what's happening is that you are then putting pressure on yourself. The minute you put pressure on yourself, you sabotage yourself and you
so
will not
true.
perform to the highest level. So, one of the ways we build self trust is by acknowledging what we have done well, acknowledging where our strengths are.
Love it.
Even sometimes taking a risk to say, I believe I know. It's self trust when it comes to studying for something or preparing something is an easy example. So if you're studying for a big interview or a big, passing the bar or something that's like quote unquote very important,
Right.
because the minute you say it's really important, now you're putting pressure on yourself. And the
Uh-huh.
minute you put that emotional weight of pressure, it's very hard to trust yourself. And so we want to be careful where our emotions are, but we need to acknowledge and validate and say, like, you know what? I'm really good at information. I'm really good at what I do. I've studied this well. I trust
Hmm.
my training. I trust my education. I trust my study
Yes.
habits. Fill in the blank, but we have to start giving. I think we want other people to tell us, you got this. We have to be the ones who give it to ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. And really, that trust coming from within could be a game changer for people because oftentimes with OCD, they'll get the reassurance, but it doesn't fix it. Right. It may give them a short-term fix, but not in the long term. And so they
Yes.
continue to get reassurance and validation over and over. But then in the work, it's about we got to trust ourselves. We got to have this
Yeah.
healthy mindset and know the real you. Like the real you
Yeah.
studied. The real you has
Hmm.
good intentions. The knowledge is
Hmm.
there, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
if it's
And if
coming
and
natural.
if I would speak from personal experience, I grew up with I wouldn't say I grew up with a parent who had some OCD tendencies, which you then
Hmm.
mirror what you are taught. And so there's some certain behaviors I've noticed in my life that I will triple or quadruple check something, and you can easily justify it by saying, "Well, I got to make sure the stove is off 4 times." And I've had to be very mindful in my own
Wow.
life of some of that. And once and I'm no expert on OCD by any means, but I have learned when it comes to self trust with small behaviors like that. Once I know that I've done something, and it's particularly some area where I might have a tendency to want to double, triple, quadruple check something, to
Yes.
say it loud, I trust myself.
I love it.
I've done it. I mean, it's really interesting because it's so simple.
Yes.
And like, I'll go, I have turned off the stove. I've checked it twice. I've unplugged my little space heater.
Mm-hmm.
Trust myself.
Yes.
And then you're able to. So, like, it's really interesting. You're even able to use your words out loud to say to yourself, like, I've done it. Like, we can talk in the context of like daily life stuff or like, OCD or over preparing for something on bigger things. But fundamentally, you're right. It all boils down to we want to know, am I going to be okay? Is it going to be okay?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
in those contexts of passing or failing or something awful happening or not that we're trying to
Exactly.
control, we need
Mm-hmm.
to, like, fundamentally, I am safe. And if something bad or something I don't want to happen were to happen, I also trust that I will be okay.
Right.
That's where we have to give ourselves some peace.
Yes. And well, you do share your personal story on your podcast,
Yeah.
and I appreciate
Yeah.
your vulnerability in that. So, what is
Yeah.
it, episode 444?
Yeah. It's easy to remember 444.
Yes. Yes. So, if
Yes.
the listeners want to go check that out, because
Yeah.
you have, I mean, the story to back it up about how, you've been through some things and then learning to that things are going to be okay because you trust yourself.
Yes. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Powerful.
in the very short picture of that, like I've had a lot of rock bottoms in lots of different ways. And
Hmm.
that episode definitely breaks it down. And I had to learn to trust myself again. I had to learn to trust other people. I actually and my faith is a very important part of my life, but I had to also learn to trust my relationship with God again. Like I trust was really
Wow.
integral to a lot of my healing in
Yes.
lots of ways, right? And so and if you're struggling with trusting yourself, you have to then go, why, what am I afraid of? Because when we don't trust, like
Mm-hmm.
if I don't trust a friend, I have a certain friend who says, and I love her, we can love somebody but not trust them, which
Ooh,
is interesting.
it
You
is.
can love them but not trust them. And so there's certain friends I love, but I don't trust them with my secrets. There's certain friends I love, but I don't trust them to do what they say they're going to do. I
Yes.
think they're
Right?
lovely people and they've got great ambitions and they say they're going to show up or they say they're going to do this and then
Yes.
they overcommit. So it's not a personal attack on them intending to be untrustworthy,
Mm-hmm.
but the friends that you're worried about, like if I'm going to go drive to Starbucks to meet my friend, do I trust she's going to show up? I know which friends won't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can love that friend, but also not be pressed to get to that Starbucks on time because I know they're either not coming or they're going to be 20 minutes late themselves. But
Exactly.
all that to be said, you have to go, if I'm going to be the one person I'm in a relationship with my whole life is myself. We want to go, what
Mm-hmm.
can I do to build trust with myself? How can I show up for myself more in small ways, which comes
Yeah.
down to keeping your promises to yourself or
Mm-hmm.
being kind or doing what you say you're going to do. But when I question if I'm going to trust somebody, if you're dating, for example, should I trust them? Is he have integrity? You go, what am I
Mm-hmm.
afraid of if you can't trust him? And so if you
Right.
can't trust yourself, we have to ask ourselves, what am I actually afraid of?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was working with a client on this and we were working on some post-eating disorder thoughts that are still bothering her. And
Okay.
we got down to the core thought was she said, I don't trust my body. I think my body wants to be fat. And so she didn't
Ooh.
trust that. She was like, we're over exercising over all the things. But
Yes.
the core belief was the problem. And so we didn't trust the body. Now we can fix some of the behavior and the compulsion
Mm-hmm.
activities based on fixing the trust at the core of, hey, what can we do to build trust with your body?
Right.
We show ourselves that our body's actually been trustworthy our whole lives.
Yes. And these women that I work with for OCD, a lot of them are so afraid of A, losing control, or B,
Yeah.
things changing. So I think
Yeah.
self-trust would be the key part in helping them navigate that change because in the end, they're going to trust that it'll be okay because they're going to make sure it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Because you can look at yourself and go, I've been a person who's proactive and also values control over what I can control.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wise enough to know I can't control change. Change will happen. Change is inevitable, but I can control my thoughts about myself, which means if I know I'm good at managing all of the curveballs that come my way now, that means I can trust that I'm equally capable post change to handle
Yes.
anything that comes my way. Like I
Right.
trust that I can pivot. I trust that I can make a modification. I trust that, like, I trust my ability to be on
Mm-hmm.
top of that is how we can build the trust. We can't trust we
Yes.
don't know what's going to happen politically. We don't know what's going to happen economically. We don't know what's going to happen in the people we love.
Right.
Like there's a lot out of our control, but we can trust our ability to handle it.
Yes. So would you say that self-trust really builds into resilience?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you trust yourself and you trust your ability to be curious, to be um, flexible, to be innovating on what you need to do or what you don't need to do, what you need to change, then you really can do anything. You can push any boulder up any mountain. Now, it might not be fast, but we can move
Good point.
forward,
Yes.
right? Like we got to release this need to do things at a certain speed
Mm-hmm.
and instead just be okay with progress, continuous improvement.
Right.
And
Love that.
insight is continuous improvement. Anytime we can learn something about ourselves, we've grown, we've made progress, right?
Right. Right. So in making those promises to yourself as a high achiever, like sometimes you get overcommitted, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how do you coach ladies in particular? How do you coach
Hmm.
them to not overextend themselves? Because it happens, right? You put 20 things on your to-do
Absolutely.
list, like
Yeah.
that's not realistic. So,
Well, right. So we have to be loving enough to ourselves to
mm,
allow ourselves to be human. Because, and this is where I really, how I mentioned earlier, self trust is the byproduct of having built friendship with yourself, which
yeah,
is we think about which friends do we trust, which ones we don't. And so often little things, not like they're intentionally not showing up for us or they're intentionally irresponsible
late
with,
or yeah.
yeah, yeah. But like, you're like, okay, but the ones I trust, they just take the relationship and the friendship more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
To communicate well. So to communicate with yourself well, which means journaling, understanding yourself. So in the same way you would be friends to somebody, if you saw a friend over scheduling, you'd be like, babe, why? Why are you doing this to yourself?
Right.
Why are you stressed out? You are stressed because you are trying to do three people's lives in 2 days. Like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
we would be loving and able enough to tell a friend, like, you need to slow your roll. Like, we can slow down a little bit. You don't need to do all the things for all the people. And
Yeah.
we have to get back to what are you trying to prove? Why are you overcommitting? I mean, like that,
Right.
the what are you trying to prove is like a big, especially for high achieving women.
Yes.
But if we were speaking to a friend, we'd be like, babe, what are you trying to prove? You're amazing as is. Like you don't have to
Uh-huh.
go so far over. So we want to take that same conversation we would have to a friend that trusts us and that we trust. And we have to mirror that conversation back to ourselves and be that friend to ourselves. Because when I have done that, when I'm overcommitted or I've stretched thin or I've pretended that I'm superwoman and like, oh, it's fine. I can do it. One, there's some pride there, and I have to be honest enough with myself, and I have to
Sure.
really then be curious about, gosh, Trish, what are you trying to prove?
Mm-hmm.
Or who are you? Whose love are you trying to earn by not being a burden, by not needing to delegate
Ooh,
or ask for help, or or it's
good
so
point.
interesting for me. It had to be. I do a lot. So one to prove things for the little golf clap that nobody gives me of like, look how
Yeah.
much she can get done. Like, I don't know, like you have to ask yourself, what am I doing this all for? Because I had years in my life where I was just stretched to the max. And then I had to go for when I learned to be a friend to myself, I had compassion. And I was like, why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh, that's interesting. Because nobody actually cares.
Yeah.
These people I want the golf clap for are not even golf clapping for me. They
I mean,
just think I'm a machine. And meanwhile, I'm driving myself crazy like a machine, pretending to be happy. So
right.
it's a good breaking point for me.
Yes, that's a lovely perspective of, be a good friend to yourself.
Which is,
I love that.
we say that. I'm sure people have heard it. It's so much easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
I can speak from my experience. I had you know, decade long eating disorder, a
Oh,
super, super
wow.
self-critical voice, body dysmorphia. And some
Yes.
of my eating disorder and disordered eating patterns where I didn't trust myself in the kitchen because I would go through seasons where I would either emotionally eat and binge eat or that I
Mm,
would starve myself. So I honestly didn't know how to trust myself around food. And that created a deeper message of, well, you can't be trusted. And so I really had to
mm.
rebuild. And then because I had that thought, you can't be trusted. And then I would sometimes be really proud of myself
Yeah.
for being quote unquote good, which is like a whole nother issue in itself. Then I would also then be self-critical and self-judging of myself when I was didn't hit the mark. So the
Mhm.
self-critical voice taught me to always be this just negative to myself and like
Okay.
a bully. And so it's really interesting. You have to learn
Yes.
if anyone is resonating of being self-critical or hard on yourself,
Mm-hmm.
then we need to really go to the base work of like, I mean, I'm saying kindergarten, first grade level, this is how you be a friend.
Oh,
Because I had to deconstruct everything,
right.
in my 20s and 30s to go, I don't know how to be a friend to myself. And so if anybody's feeling that way, please don't feel like you're behind. Please don't feel like you're stupid or that you're disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
I think millions of women don't know how to be a friend to themselves because we're so focused on doing and achieving and doing things for others that we've lost connection with ourselves. And so to
Yes.
rebuild a friendship with yourself, you start at that kindergarten, first grade level. Like, let's be nice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's do things together. Let's learn to have fun together. Say nice words to your friend. Like, I mean, I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, so it's very
Yes.
easy for these elementary school ages. But like, these are the conversations as a parent you have about teaching your kids how to be a friend,
Right. And
right?
so it really comes down to that inner voice
Yeah,
and learning how to talk to yourself in a friendly way.
100% a friendly, kind way.
Oh, I love that.
Kindness, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so crazy. And I think so many people listening, so many women resonate that they're kind to other people,
Yes.
but
Oh, they
not to
want to be too.
themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need the desire to want to be kind to others as to be that kindness to ourselves to be as deeply ingrained and as high of a value as being kind to others.
Right. Okay. So, Trish, what are some daily habits? I've already got some ideas from your
Yeah,
podcast, but for the
sure.
listeners today, what are those daily habits or tips that you do to help you stay connected with your own sense of self-trust?
Yes, totally. So, daily habit, the core number one is journaling, right? Taking a
Hmm.
few minutes to journal. And really, the way I like to talk about journaling is very time box. It's less than 5 minutes and it's starting with gratitude. So, a habit of gratitude as well. But to really journal, like, hey, is there a thought in my brain that doesn't belong? Is there a negative thought? Like, think about journaling like brushing your teeth. You're just brushing your brain. There's always going to be some good. There's always going to be some negativity because I think there's a lot of pushback against journaling of like, well, I shouldn't have to journal to be this happiest version of myself. But we don't say that about our teeth. We don't like, oh, I can't believe I have to brush my teeth this morning. My breath should
Hmm.
still be good. No, we're like, it's just a human body. And if you think about
Yes.
how many inputs and how many thousands of messages of not being enough and we should do more that we're getting per day, it's no wonder that we have some self-critical or negative thinking that
Hmm.
we need to clean out on a daily basis. Right. So to start learning how to reframe your thoughts and have small conversations with yourself. And then another habit that I think is really critical to self-talk is to self-validate, is to at the end of the day find
Hmm.
three things that you say as if you were saying to a friend. So Erin, if I was like, girl, you know what, today I saw you crushing it at this.
Hmm.
And like I really saw how well prepared you were for that and for this podcast. And you were like, just great. Like just complimenting yourself. Like you
Yes.
track a win and then give yourself that little it's more better than a golf clap. It's an atta girl. Like get into the
Oh.
habit of
Hmm.
little micro atta girls really starts giving you permission to be like to be able to cheer yourself on. When you can learn to cheer yourself on, you're learning to engage in conversation. It's so funny because
100%.
what I teach people is like I teach people how to have conversations with themselves. And you go like people are like, I don't want to be the person who talks to myself. I'm like, but everybody talks to themselves. Like that's the number one conversation. The longest conversation you're gonna have in your whole life is yourself with yourself. So let's
Yes.
learn how to have good ones.
Right.
Like
Yeah. What's it going to hurt?
conversation.
I
Well,
mean,
right. And if you think about like socially speaking, a great conversationalist has a skill set of good conversation, of asking the right
mhm.
questions, of listening in a certain way, of being curious, of engaging others. So you actually can improve your quality of conversation with yourself by learning skills of better conversation, better self-talk, better. So I think sometimes people are like, well, it's just how I think. We can always change how we think. It's the one superpower that we have.
Yes. And it's within your control.
It is within
So,
your control.
yeah. Well,
Mhm.
again, very much appreciate this conversation today. And Trish, where can the listeners connect with you or learn more about your work?
Absolutely. So, well, if you're a podcast listener, which you are, come check
Mhm.
out the Confidence Podcast anywhere you find podcasts. On Instagram, I'm Trish_Blackwell, and then of course TrishBlackwell.com. And if you're interested, is my core website. If you're interested in really diving deeper on your confidence, I have an entire online school called the
Yeah.
College of Confidence, called collegeofconfidence.com. You can find out more there, but lots of great free resources to build the skill of self-talk and the skill of confidence.
Wonderful. And I'll be sure to put all of those links in the show notes
Awesome.
too.
Awesome, Erin.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.